Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the second part in our Amazon Vendor Strategy series on advanced advertising strategies to maximize your return on investment. My name is Dina Podner, and I'm the Marketing Manager at Marketplace Strategy. Marketplace Strategy is a strategic marketplace sales acceleration agency servicing clients from startups to Fortune 50 companies. We manage more than $900 million in Amazon revenue in a variety of categories from grocery to personal care, home improvement, electronics, furniture, and many more. Our team includes strategists, designers, writers, and advertising specialists trained and focused exclusively on Amazon. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items for today. If for any reason you have to step away or miss a portion of the webinar, the entire session recording and slide deck will be sent out as a follow-up. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll bring them up during the question and answer portion at the very end. Any unanswered questions during the webcast will be answered via direct email follow-up. Presenting today will be two of our lead strategists, Ben Lemaster and Curtis Rummel. Both Curtis and Ben have an extensive background in digital advertising and manage millions of dollars in AMS spend. To give you an idea for the agenda for today, we're going to try to keep it to 45 minutes to respect everyone's time. We'll start with a brief history of Amazon marketing services and then move into the overview of ad types. Next, we'll talk about the reporting and analytics and how to best leverage the data, which brings us to our suggested best AMS practices. We'll take you through the 5 actionable tactics and then conclude it with where the future of AMS is heading and end with questions. Now I'm going to hand it over to Curtis to get us started.
Perfect, thanks, Dana. So just to get started, we just wanted to provide kind of a really brief kind of AMS history of just some of the key points that have launched over the last kind of 12 months or so. So just on a high level, AMS launched in 2012, so it has been around for quite a long time, but generally speaking, the last 12 months is where it has grown significantly across the board. Just kind of calling out a couple key points here, but broad match types for headline search ads only just became available in June 2017. Kind of immediately followed by the new AMS stores being rolled out in July. So as everybody knows, the new AMS stores are kind of all over the place now and are a really valuable piece of anybody's testing plan and just landing pages and your brand page in general. So it is kind of amazing to think that that only launched kind of in July of last year. AMS in Canada launched in September and kind of going all the way to just recently where we finally just got access to account-wide kind of keyword reports. And that's where we can actually kind of see the data and trends across the entire account without having to spend tens of hours going into each individual campaign to kind of pull all that different data. So in the last 8 to 12 months, we've seen significant growth, and we think that at a high level that the complexity and the sophistication of Amazon and AMS in general is just going to continue. So our goal today is kind of to go through again some of the basics, but then some of the advanced aspects as of right now, so you can immediately start taking advantage of those. So now we're just gonna really briefly kind of run through some of the different ad types and some of the key aspects of those, just to kind of set the stage for kind of some of the future conversations. So really quickly, so just sponsored product ads. These are the ad type that show up and just look like a normal search result in any of the search result pages. It just looks like a normal product, but just says sponsored underneath it. This is targeted by keyword, so that's kind of the aspect there. The headline search ad, this is something that shows up on the top of the search results that looks like the banner with the image on the left, the copy, and then the images on the right. This is also targeted by keyword. And then finally with product display ads. So this is on the detail page itself. So there's a couple different locations on the lower right and the bottom of the detail page. And then this is targeted by ASIN or targeted by product category or interest. Generally speaking, if you wanted to look at each of these ads as, as part of a funnel, the headline search ad would be on the top, the sponsored product ads would be in the middle, and the product display ads would be towards the bottom. We have Amazon advertising platform, AAP, on the left-hand side, which would be the equivalent of AMG, so Amazon Media Group. And this is more of the programmatic display side, so display advertising or kind of media buys across the board. We have this going the full length of the funnel because this can really hit, everything from the very top to, retargeting all the way on the bottom. We're not going to talk about that today. This will be specifically focused around AMS, but we just wanted to kind of highlight the entire ecosystem here. So again, just kind of the final look at the different ad types and some of the different elements that are unique to each of them. So from the headline search perspective, again, this is more of the top of the funnel. This has a medium cost per click relative to the other ad types. Generally speaking, this is a low supply. So, for every search result page that you look at, there's generally only one headline search kind of placement there. So everybody is bidding for that one location. And, on the Seller Central side, which they're kind of rolling out some different betas across the board where, even headline search is showing up, vertically or on the bottom of search results. So we expect that that's something that will eventually be rolled out in the AMS side. But generally speaking, the supply is very low. The brand visibility is very high. Just because you have the logo and the call to action above the fold, and it's the first thing that you really see. So that is another kind of valuable aspect of the headline search standpoint, is in addition to your clicks, in addition to the fact of building profitable campaigns, you're also in addition getting that that high brand visibility. And generally speaking, this would have kind of a medium return on ad spend across the board relative to the other ad types. And that's mostly due to kind of the medium cost per click and the low supply and some of the other aspects. From the sponsored products standpoint, again, this is more of the middle of the funnel. This has a low cost per click and it has a high supply. So generally speaking, there are probably between 3 and 8 different sponsored product location placements throughout a search result page at any given time, which the more the merrier, because basically that allows us to have the lower cost per clicks across the board because there's more supply for people to be bidding against. The brand visibility here is we have marked as medium, and that's mostly because you do get some really nice impressions above the fold if your bids warrant you being up there. But generally speaking, just due to the locations where they show up, it does provide really good impressions. However, it's only showing the product title and the primary image, so it doesn't have a lot of that logo or branded aspect that headline would have. And generally, these have a high return on ad spend relative to the other ad types. This is mostly just due to the very low cost per click and the really good positioning and targeting. And then finally, the product display ad side. So again, this is on the bottom of the funnel. These generally have a high cost per click and a medium supply. So generally, back in a couple months ago, there used to be only one location where this would be directly below the add to cart button. But now they're rolling out a lot of other different placements where directly below the bullet points or even lower on the detail page. So as they provide more and more of these placements for PDAs, this is going to be something that is going to lower the general cost per clicks across the board. The brand visibility here is also medium because this is nice where you get a similar aspect of headline search ads where you get the logo or you can get an image as well as some of the other kind of pieces that you can kind of optimize and make more brand focused. And then finally, the return on ad spend here is marked as low because of the high cost per clicks and the medium to low supply. And most of the time here, you're talking and advertising to people that are on the bottom of the funnel across the board. So actually getting them to convert and change their mind on a product that they're already looking at is somewhat difficult. So not only do you have those high cost per clicks, but across the board, you generally have lower conversion rates. So we just wanted to kind of set the stage for some of the different ad types that we see and some of the different use cases for them. And now we're just going to jump into some of the reporting aspects, some of the analytics, and then how we're utilizing these reports. And Ben's going to run through these.
Okay, like Curtis said, we're going to go ahead and show you how we use this data to inform our entire strategy throughout the system. So we're going to cover all 7 of these reports. Sponsored Products has 5 reports. The headline search ads have 1, and the product display ads also have 1. With the 5 sponsored product ads and the headline search ads, those can all be found in the Advertising Reports tab. Product display ads are a little bit different. You can only get to that report by clicking into the campaign and then downloading it. So first of all, the search term report is by far the most valuable. It is got the most data, and as I said, we use it to inform our entire approach and our entire strategy for AMS. Just like with Google, you can find long tail terms that are matching to your broad and phrase terms, and then work those into exact match to get very high converting traffic at a better cost. And just like Google, you can go through, find unqualified searches, and then use negatives to block out those searches, which overall just creates a more efficient process. 2 things that are very specific to AMS that we use this report for, that we would never do in Google because it's not possible, is on one hand, we will take the long tail searches that we see here that are high converting, and we'll feed those into our headline search ads. The biggest reason for that is because there is no actual search term data available right now for headline search reporting. So success there really depends on how well we set it up in the first place. The other thing we'll do as far as informing product display campaigns goes is in our automatic campaigns, we can see the product detail pages that we serve impressions on and get sales from. So we can then go ahead and target those product detail pages with product display ads and make some very, very relevant ads that speak to the copy already on the page, and that's how we're going to be winning sales from the competition. The other thing we do that is completely unlike Google has to do with the fact that Amazon has so many more positions we can potentially win. On Google, you're limited to 1 ad position of 7. On Amazon, you can win a bunch. So we actually will use an overlapping system where we'll run similar terms in multiple campaigns. And while that is really effective from the potential of winning multiple positions, increasing brand visibility, and increasing conversions, it can occasionally become problematic. So in that case, what we would do to keep ahead of that is use negatives to kind of tighten those groups and limit the overlap to some degree. The overlap is definitely valuable, but it just needs to be controlled, and you need to be aware of the overlap. Now we're getting on to the keyword report, which this is less valuable than search terms, primarily because we don't actually see any search terms. What it does give us, though, is a good degree of general campaign health. In addition to bid strength, Amazon also really prioritizes relevancy and historical CTR, and historical CTR could essentially be considered relevancy over time. As people are interacting with the ads and purchasing, the ads become more and more relevant. It works for Amazon because nobody wants to see an ad that isn't going to lead to a purchase, and Amazon doesn't want to show the ad that's not going to lead to a purchase. So from here, we can take a look at some of the keywords and see if we have low CTRs or low conversion rates. And this is just a high-level view to give us some clues to dig in further and see where we can improve performance. The advertised product report has a couple functions. Since advertised products and sponsored product campaigns are actually the ad, since we can't modify these ads, it is in some degree like an ad report you would see in AdWords, where we're able to see CTRs on the ads, things like that. Again, this comes down to relevancy, and it comes down to how well these ads are performing within their respective campaigns. Frequently, we'll have the same products advertised across multiple campaigns. This is a really great way to see how those different campaigns stack up against each other strictly on the product side. And in cases where we might have more than one product in a campaign, if we want to clean up the data and get better understanding of what search terms are leading to what purchases, we can go ahead and kind of like look at this quickly here, pause the products that might not be doing as well, and then proceed from there. Again, just like with the keyword report, this is good for looking at some high-level functionality where we can improve and dive in deeper through the search term report. Next, we have the placement report. If you're at all familiar with Google's placement and position reporting, you're probably used to seeing average position. You're probably used to seeing things like the estimated bids for first page of results, top of page, first position. There's nothing nearly as robust here. This pretty much gives us top of search or other on Amazon. The interesting thing here is when you're looking at delivery and when you're looking at where the clicks and conversions are coming from, you will sometimes see that you might need to increase your bids to get further on the page, higher up, and get better conversions. Or you might actually decide to go the opposite route and drop your bids to get some lower positions, which might lead to better conversions. It really comes down to what the data says and how you're going to be interpreting it. A lot of times we have noticed that lower positions will lead to much better conversions because so much at the top of the page is often just scrolled past because people are used to seeing ads there. So now the performance over time report is the final sponsored product one we're going to be looking at. This one is really more about identifying trends, whether you're looking at days of the week or weeks within a month. It's a good idea to be aware of what days are most profitable for you. And it's at that point something you'd want to increase your budget, increase your bids. If you're a B2B business primarily selling during the week, you'd probably want to throttle down your budgets and bids on weekends and holidays and increase the budgets and bids on work days. Similarly, if you are consistently seeing that your daily spend is approaching your daily budget at the account level, or if your cost per click is approaching your bid cap, that could be indicative that the marketplace is becoming more competitive and that you're going to have to reevaluate and increase your budgets and your bids to maintain your market share instead of losing it to competition. The keyword report here for the headline search ads, this is a little bit different than how we would use the keyword report for sponsored products. While it's still an issue of health, one thing about headline search ads is that any keyword that has had 1,000 impressions with an insufficient CTR will immediately be paused, and that's Amazon's call, and we can do nothing about that. So that's part of the reason why we have to feed such relevant searches into these campaigns from the customer search term report. The other thing we can do here that's really effective is we can make complementary campaigns that either test a match type, so we can have an exact match type or a phrase match type, and run the same ad and see which match type works better with the messaging in the ad. Since we can't see search terms, we at least want to maintain some kind of control over the word order at the very least. On the opposite end, we could do the same terms and same match type and then different ads and test the ad copy and see how those work with the specific terms. Even though broad match is available for headline search, we rarely recommend it simply because the lack of control and the lack of visibility into the metrics. As for the product display reporting, this is pretty basic. It's just impressions, clicks, and sales. One of the really great things about this, though, is we can tailor the messaging in these ads so closely to what's on the page that we can, like I said, really take those sales from your competitors. One thing we do want to be very careful about, though, is to always make sure that this expand targeting to other closely related products box is unchecked. That is checked by default. That's not a good idea, simply because there's no way for us to see what those other products are. It's best if that's unchecked. We know exactly which page it's serving on. The relevancy that we have built into the messaging is going to be intact, and we'll just have an overall better understanding of how the results are and testing different messages, things like that. So those are some of the ways we use these reports. Now we're going to review some best practices. One of the first best practices, and this again goes to being able to segment and understand the data rapidly rather than having to just spend hours and hours going through this, is the way we name our campaigns. We have a very consistent structure where we will begin with the ad type. So in the case of this example, this is a sponsored product automatic campaign. We would similarly have like a sponsored product manual targeted campaign or headline search or product display. Next would be product category. This is what allows us to kind of see how different categories within a catalog are functioning relative to the entire catalog. After that, it would be a subcategory. So we're getting a little bit more granular there. And in this case, it is tuna is the category, EVOO is the subcategory. Then we have a description field, and that is essentially like the thematic basis of the campaign. So in this case, it's a lot of terms around 12-pack tuna pouches. And then finally, we have the ASIN. All of these different fields allow us to very rapidly assess where we're doing well and where we might need to improve. It also gives us like simultaneously very granular detail, but from a big picture view. Next, we have the importance of consistent report downloads. This primarily has to do with the fact that unlike something like AdWords, where you can go back for a very long period of time, Amazon only lets you go back 60 days. So at the end of each month, once all the data has dumped in for that month, it's important to go ahead and download a 30-day report for the entire previous month. The other thing you're going to want to do is 14 days into the following month, go ahead and download the report again, because due to the 14-day attribution window, spend numbers can change, sales numbers can change, and combined, those two reports are going to give you a very clear picture of direct and latent attribution to your campaigns, not only on the products that you're advertising, but also in the brand halo products. So anything else that's in your catalog that might not be advertised in that campaign, you're going to have a really firm understanding of what's working and what isn't, and give you some other ideas to build out other campaigns. Finally, the last one I'm going to talk about before I pass this back to Curtis is individual ASIN targeting. This is something that, as I said, there's no real clear line between a search term and a sale, unless we're setting up these campaigns with a single product per campaign. This allows us to see very clearly exactly what terms are working, what terms aren't. Now, we do see situations where we'll have automatically targeted sponsored product campaigns that are running with many ASINs in there. That's relatively common. And the thing is, we frequently see fantastic sales performance from those, because the way they function, since it's automatically targeted and since there's so many different ASINs, the market is pretty much running that campaign for you. Different trends in customer intent and interest, different trends in product performance, different trends in seasonality. These things can all impact that campaign in ways you have no control over. So while those can be very beneficial, strictly from a cost efficiency standpoint, they're less effective if your primary interest is like learning and developing and using the data you're seeing to continually revise and improve your performance. So I'm going to pass it back to Curtis for some additional best practices.
Perfect. So one of the other ones that we just recommend on a very general high level when people are just getting started is to start with this kind of 70, 20, 10 kind of budget allocation across the board, across the different ad types. This is what we see work best at the very beginning, but this changes completely depending on category, on specific goals. If you're focusing more on just return, or you're focusing more on protecting your own branded search or kind of conquering competitors. But on a high level, this is where we definitely recommend brands to start. The final kind of quick best practice here is just making sure that you're utilizing negative keywords. You'd be very surprised at the number of kind of clients that come in that have basically no utilization of this. And this is probably one of the easiest, most immediate ways of kind of increasing the return across the board, is just identifying, through some of the ways that, Ben just talked about, identifying some of those customer search terms that just aren't performing well, and, looking at that data and then basically systematically removing them from future search. So just kind of a very high level one that we definitely recommend kind of implementing right away. So now we're going to get into some of the more actionable kind of AMS tactics that we would recommend that will allow you to kind of increase that return over time. So the first one that we always highlight is to focus on both building profitable campaigns, but also building kind of long-term return on the back end via organic keyword rankings. So we need to understand, your catalog and understand what products you're offering and what kind of categories and subcategories, and then understanding where your products are currently ranking for your priority keywords. And then basically when we have an understanding of that, we need to make sure that we're matching AMS campaigns that we're building out for specific ASINs with the goal of improving keyword rankings for very specific search terms. So if we know, for example, that this ASIN that may not be one of your top sellers, but that ASIN is converting and already ranking very well for one of our top priority keywords, one of the common mistakes would be, oh, you're going to continue to advertise your bestseller instead of advertising that keyword that's already ranking well for that search. So again, we just want to focus on how can we not only create profitable campaigns, but how can we boost our long-term organic ranking? And with Amazon being a virtuous cycle and really building that flywheel, we want to support products that are already established and already ranking in Amazon, so that we can get that, again, that long-term, that back-end return. And this is just another reason why you should never be doing your AMS in a silo, your advertising on Amazon in general in a silo. It should be very integrated with basically your full Amazon approach, because this would directly kind of go with, what is your strategy for specific products and what products are you launching and things along those lines. You definitely gain a lot of kind of benefits by matching those together. The next one is frequently bought together box manipulation. So the goal here is to really drive Amazon's recommendation engine sales. So there was the number thrown out there that 35% of all Amazon sales end up going through the recommendation engine in some form or another, whether that's customers who bought this also bought this, or the frequently bought together box, things along those lines. So our goal here is how can we utilize product display ads to directly target complementary products to acquire the frequently bought together box, more times than not. So the goal here would be to continue to capture that kind of that locked in frequently bought together box, so we can boost organic traffic and organic sales kind of through this kind of free advertising for us in the long run. If you don't have premium Amazon Retail Analytics, so premium for moving forward, if you don't have that, one of the recommendations is to just look at basically the products on the bottom of the detail page. Look at the customers who purchased, this product also purchase this product. It's Amazon's goal of trying to, provide you recommendations of alternatives. However, if you see complementary products in there, that could be an immediate opportunity for you to consider running product display ads against to try to acquire this. If you do have premium, one of the really great ways is to utilize the market basket analysis report, and that allows you to directly see very specific percentages and units over specific time periods. And we can use that to see, okay, when somebody bought Jif peanut butter, 10% of the time they also bought the Welch's jelly. That immediately allows us to know this could be a potential option for utilizing product display ads in the future, and a way for us to potentially capture that frequently bought together box. Or if that frequently bought together box already exists, how can we defend that so that we don't lose that for the future? So both of those options are how we would kind of really think about this. The next one is your daily, weekly, monthly budget allocation. So the goal here would be to understand where your budgets are being spent, your daily budgets and your daily CPCs, and understanding where that's going to see, okay, if the majority of our sales are happening, like Ben talked about in a previous slide, if the majority of our sales are happening Monday through Thursday, and the conversion rate and the clicks and everything kind of completely falls off Friday through Sunday, let's make sure that we increase our CPCs and increase our budgets across the board for Monday through Thursday, so that we can take the best advantage and take control of that increased traffic and that increased willingness to purchase. So how can we utilize, the sponsored product ad performance over time report, as well as the headline search individual kind of campaign report. How can we utilize both of those to inform when the majority of people are clicking and buying, so that we can basically adjust our budgets to better capture that? So, I mean, one of the examples is, the more business to business focused clients where, almost all of their sales happen Monday through Friday, but there's still traffic on Saturday and Sunday, it just never results in a conversion. So the ACoS just spikes on the weekends. So just one of the aspects when you would want to use this. Another example of this would be for within premium reporting. If you utilize the geographic sales report, you can see kind of specifically, like on the right-hand side here, an example of what you would normally see. But if you see that the large majority of your sales are coming from the West Coast, so for this example, California and Washington, if you know that the majority of your sales are happening there and you have a limited budget, the one thing that you could do is to start incorporating day parting. So basically starting campaigns and stopping campaigns during specific time periods, so that, if you weren't doing that already, you would basically be running out of budget at, 1 p.m. Eastern, which would be 10 a.m. Pacific. So you could have some campaigns that are just completely running out of budget before, the West Coast even wakes up. So how can we, again, utilize this data that's available to us in premium or just in the normal advertising reports to see when the majority of our sales are happening, so that we can prioritize and kind of adjust our budgets to different areas? The next tactic that we would recommend here is just ongoing A/B testing. So we've seen a lot of success with this kind of across the board. And it's just something that, once you have the basics down and you really kind of understand those previous pieces and you have a good hold on that, this is really the next step to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck across the board. So we just have some kind of specific testing variables that we can regularly test. So on the sponsored product ad side, testing basically the product to keyword match. So understanding, if you have 3 products, 3 different ASINs, and one of those ASINs may perform horribly for a specific keyword, but a completely different product that's still relevant may perform extremely well. So it's just understanding and kind of doing ongoing tests there to understand, what products work very well with specific keywords. So that's kind of what we would test on that standpoint. From the headline search ad perspective, you can test the headline ad copy, the image that's on the left, so whether that's your logo or a custom image or a product image, the images that are on the right, so what products you have showing up there in the first place and in what order, and then finally the landing page side. So are you driving them to your store? Are you driving to them to specific pages on your store? Are you A/B testing the actual, the store landing pages to see which converts better, and utilizing kind of the AMS store insights to determine that? Those are kind of the 4 that you would really focus on in the headline search standpoint. But with regards to the left image on a headline search, that is a really interesting piece, because when you're looking at your product sales from, and Amazon doesn't provide us this yet, but if you're looking at your product sales on your website or on your website's traffic in general, if you're seeing that the majority of your sales and traffic is coming from basically mobile, it may make more sense to focus the left image on utilizing a product image there, because on mobile, all you see is the left image and the headline copy. So if the majority of the traffic that you think is going to your Amazon searches or looking for your products is coming from mobile, it may make more sense to use a product on the left-hand side and then the copy. Whereas if you think the majority is on desktop because you have a higher price point item, or it's more of a business buyer because they generally just buy from their desktop, then that may make more sense to focus the logo on the left-hand side, because you're really hoping for that extra brand impression and really boosting kind of your brand visibility to them. So that would just be one of the kind of considerations that I would have with headline searches in particular, but it would also be a really great test that everybody should be running. So just kind of a quick point there. On the product display ad side, you can test the ad copy, the image, whether that you're using a logo or you're using a custom image or a product image, or the actual product title from that standpoint. So those are just some of the different pieces that you would have. And obviously with the product display ad side, you always want to make sure that, again, you're having a one-to-one match of your product to a competitor product or a complementary product or your own branded product, and you're providing, ad copy or your product title that is very aligned with what you're advertising against to get the best, click-through rate and kind of conversion rate even on the back end. So the recommendation that we would have here is just really build out your testing plan. Define your hypothesis with each of these tests on, what are you testing and why? What does success look like? What are your KPIs that you're going to judge the success of the test on? And what is the test duration? So understanding those pieces as a kind of a first step, and then just making sure that you're only testing one element at a time. I mean, it's classic testing, but if you test 3 different things at the same time, you're never going to know what actually worked and what didn't. So just kind of a quick note there. But also be implementing this test or a similar test across similar ASINs. So basically, you can get more data and a kind of a higher sample size. That's you're not just making your decisions based off of the one test that you did on the one ASIN. So running these tests across multiple different products to kind of prove it out. And then just understanding, did your test work? If it did, implement those across, relevant ASINs, or if it didn't, just, ignore and then move on with your testing plan. So on a high level, we generally recommend, utilizing a testing plan that lasts for 2 to 3 months, and then also refining and rebuilding that testing plan on an ongoing basis every 2 to 3 months, basically to understand and utilize any past learnings that you've had over the last 3 months to make sure that that's reflected in your next quarter's testing plan. From the kind of the last actionable tactic side, when operating and focusing on the holidays, a couple kind of points here is to make sure that you're increasing your budgets across the board. Generally, you see increases of budgets and CPCs anywhere between kind of 30 and 60%. So definitely recommend kind of increasing at least to that, because if you don't, you will definitely see your costs remain the same, but your clicks significantly decrease during this time, especially when it's going during Prime Day or Q4, when Amazon's literally pumping out emails every single day telling your competitors to increase your budgets. They almost automatically create a market for themselves that almost forces everybody to increase their CPCs if they wouldn't have otherwise. So definitely something to do there. Making sure that you have campaign language that really focuses on the time period that you're targeting. Amazon is very strict with what you can or can't say. So the idea here is to just be more relevant to the time period. If it's something around Q4, maybe you're referencing something about the cold weather, things along those lines. So just making sure that the customer knows that you're aligned with them, and this isn't an old, out of date kind of ad. Making sure you're targeting relevant promotions whenever possible. So if you have coupons running, or you have lightning deals or best deals or deal of the days running, making sure that you have heightened AMS budgets and CPCs during those times to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck. Because if you're already going to spend the time and the planning to really build out your promotions across the board, it's definitely beneficial to just make sure you get the most value for those promotions. So, from a sponsored product ad standpoint, making sure that you're always pushing the products that have coupons. Make sure you're pushing them, because they get a really nice badge that shows up in the search results that increases not only click-through rate, but then also conversion rate on a high level. So, and then finally, just making sure that you're monitoring your budgets a little bit more closely during those seasonal time periods to make sure that you're not running out of budget at 11 a.m., that your CPCs and your specific keywords that you're targeting aren't even getting impressions, because it could get to a point where you are already on the lower fringe of are you even showing up in general. And as CPCs and budgets increase during the holidays or peak time periods, you may completely fall out of relevance because you didn't update your CPCs adequately. So just a couple different points there. But then also, when you're looking at the different holiday season or peak time periods for you, going back to what Ben talked about, having campaign and product overlap is really important. So you can have 3 sponsored product ads running as long as they're in separate campaigns, which is another benefit of why you would run 1 ASIN per campaign. At least running 3 different campaigns targeting very similar keywords to make sure that you're focusing on your priority keywords, and when somebody looks for you or somebody looks for that non-branded keyword, you're saying 1, 2, 3, and they're all of your relevant products. So that's kind of an interesting thing to do to make sure that you have kind of maximum coverage if that's your goal. But if you're just focusing on return, it might be best to just have one of those placements. And also obviously matters based off of your available budget and things like that. And then also just another quick note on that is that if you have multiple products in a same variation, only one of those products in that variation will show up in a search results or any given search, because they will only show one product per variation. So just a kind of little note there. Great, so that was just some of the kind of more specific tactics that we would recommend implementing kind of across the board to kind of boost return. Now we're just going to jump into some of the different aspects of that we think will be coming down the line from AMS, and some of the things that we know are coming down the line. So 2 of the things that are coming soon, so I'm sure a lot of people received the email about the extended ad network for retargeting beta. So that rolls out for some vendors and sellers in 2 days from now, so May 18th. That is going to be really valuable because that now allows retargeting for off Amazon sites for Amazon products. And generally speaking, this was only available for Amazon advertising platform or AMG, basically buyers. And it's really great that they're starting to roll this out to the more self-serve AMS platform, because that now means that we now get access to this. For right now, this is only available in automatic sponsored product ad campaigns. So hopefully in the future, this ends up rolling out for manual campaigns as well, so that we can actually control and actually see the data, because we absolutely know that when this data gets rolled out, it will just be a big kind of mixture of data, and it won't actually be super actionable. So hopefully that's one of the aspects that rolls down. And then from the kind of the other side is, we know that business-specific targeting is supposed to launch in late Q3. So this can be really valuable, again, if you're a more business-focused customer or vendor that the majority of your sales goes to those business consumers. That's really valuable because you can have very specific keywords that maybe business buyers are looking for that just normal consumers wouldn't be. And you can also have very specific campaigns and CPCs and budgets that target those business buyers specifically. So for example, if one of those keywords is a big priority on the business side, we would increase our CPC significantly for that aspect. So these are just 2 of the ones that we know are coming down the line, and that will be very valuable when we finally get access. Some of our predictions for kind of the future of where we see AMS going, based on kind of the last 12 months and based on them expanding their overall advertising team, across the country, is additional ad placements that kind of are in addition to product display, sponsored product ads, and headline, and just also improves control. So with sponsored product ads and product display, we know that there are a couple different variations of placement locations that you can have. However, there is no control over those whatsoever, nor is there any data on, going back to the reporting side, how are we performing in position 5 as opposed to position 1, and is that high level banner blindness really impacting us? So do we bid down on specific things or not? So we think that a lot more control, insights, and just additional placements are coming down the line. But then also the ability to target specific ASINs in sponsored products related to this item. So there's basically a row on the bottom of every detail page that says, sponsored products related to this item. And the only way that you can currently target that row or that placement is by just blindly running, sponsored product ad automatic campaigns, and then making sure that the keywords that you have in your back end are relevant enough to have you show up on that product. But as of right now, again, there's no control regarding this, but we definitely think that for manual sponsored product ad campaigns in the future, we think that this will definitely be something that you can kind of manually control and manually bid against. So this would be a really exciting kind of piece that they eventually will roll out. And then just the general ability to target customers through other methods, so geographic, whether that's zip code, city, state, would be extremely valuable, as well as the time of day to better enable kind of day parting or, to match it up with specific promotions that you may be running kind of in kind of the physical world as opposed to just on Amazon. And by, if they did roll out that geographic or time of day, that would, immediately set the stage for AMS to be also rolled out to Prime Now and Fresh. So as of right now in Prime Now and Fresh, the only ability you have is to advertise via AMG and basically very specific ad buys. And it's very display oriented. And because it's a very difficult challenge, because obviously every Prime Now and Fresh location is 100% dependent on zip codes. So there's a big challenge of how do you show the correct availability to the correct zip code, and then also tie that into pay-per-click to have kind of unique auctions. So that's kind of what we see as a high-level prediction standpoint of what may be coming down the line. But we just kind of wanted to throw these out there just to kind of get everybody's kind of mind racing. And the whole goal here is if you're doing a good job on what's already out there and you're starting to roll out some of these more advanced tactics, just by strategically being aware and taking advantage of them now, when the new programs roll out, the return on ad spend that you will be able to achieve and the low cost per clicks of these new programs that are rolled out, you will have kind of immediate availability to take advantage of all those. And basically you'll be one of the first, and that will last for quite a while. So but yeah, hopefully all those were helpful.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all of that valuable information, Ben and Curtis. This is just a reminder that the recording and slide deck will be sent out in a follow-up email, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. We've received tons of questions here during the presentation, so we're going to try to get to all of them in the time left here, but if not, please feel free to continue asking us questions and we will send email follow-up to you directly. Awesome, thank you. All right, the first question was, is the webinar being recorded and will the slides be available after the webinar? Yes and yes. We will have them available on our website, and you will also receive an email with a link to the slide deck and the presentation. All right, let's see. The next question here is, how do you identify negative keywords?
The big way we identify negative keywords is simply based on when we're going through the search term reports, if we see a lot of keywords that are indicative of like a higher return on ad spend. So say, I mean, we really want to keep things as close to possible as like a 4 or 5 to 1 as like our threshold. So anything that's going to cost more than that, we tend to want to weed those out and just block them. So depending on, and it kind of depends on how the term comes up. So for instance, if there's a search for like a 12-pack of tuna, for instance, and someone's actually looking for something much more bulk, we would just want to make sure that like the bulk terms don't have any chance of showing up for 12-pack, things like that. So it's not just a matter of blocking out what is unqualified searches. It's also a matter of kind of like directing the traffic in the correct way so that they're getting the most relevant results.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have here is, what do you recommend as a bench for CTR?
Yeah, so this depends on a lot of different things. So, I mean, the first would be, what is the specific ad type that you're referencing? Going across the board for the different ones would obviously be variated specifically. I would say for headline search, without having it in front of me here, I would say 2 to 3% would be considered good from a headline search perspective. And then obviously sponsored product ads, it can be 1 to 2%. And then product display can get kind of significantly lower than that, because the quote unquote impression is triggered much easier. So whether or not you're actually, they're actually, seeing the display ad, and whether they're really seeing the display ad is kind of up for debate. But then it also depends on your category too. I mean, in consumables, we see generally higher click-through rates, whereas when you get more into, BIS, business, industrial, and scientific, they generally get lower. But just on a high level, that's kind of what I would say.
Thank you. The next question is, are there any bidding best practices?
Yeah, so generally speaking, we use a tiered bidding approach. So, prioritizing exact, followed by phrase, followed by broad, followed by automatic, from a sponsored product ad and even the headline search ad perspective. So that is just on a high level how we would approach that. That allows for significantly higher ability to focus on very specific search terms, and being more hyper focused and making sure that our exact match and the hyper focus of that allows for kind of better targeting there.
Thank you. Just reading a few more here.
Yeah, so just one of the ones is basically, when will the newest features be available in other countries, and when will there be to set up all of them? Yeah, so I mean, for example, they basically roll it out first in the US, and then they fix all the bugs and make sure it works correctly, and then they roll it out to other campaigns or other countries. So I mean, for example, Canada just recently kind of rolled out in late 2017, and you would think that would have been one of the very first ones that they kind of rolled it out to. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely assume with their global focus that these will get rolled out, I guess, more significantly over the kind of middle of 2018. Yeah, I mean, a lot of conversations around or questions around the side of overall profitability, and how are you basically interacting and managing AMS when profitability continues to go down due to vendor agreement terms consistently going up, or general chargebacks and things like that, just cost of doing business. So I mean, one of the things that we have is just, as that happens, we generally identify very specific ACOSs that continue to have to improve year over year to basically make sure that we're being profitable on an ongoing ASIN by ASIN standpoint. So the way that we're just operating for that is we just have much stricter requirements for what the ACOS/ROAS needs to be to make sense. So I mean, that's the primary way. Obviously, in addition to just AMS, we support a lot on just trying to understand that process of what changes can you make to boost profitability across the board, and hopefully that translates into the ability to have a slightly higher kind of ACOS to really push kind of the brand and the products. But just on a high level, I guess that's how we would approach that aspect.
Alrighty, it looks like we're out of time here today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for our webinar today. And please make sure to be on the lookout for the follow-up email so you can view this presentation and download the webinar. Thank you and have a great day.